Life is short, but most people live it like they have infinite time. Here's the harsh truth. You spend more energy chasing perfection than actually living. You've been conditioned to believe that everything needs to be flawless before you can move forward. But this mindset is quietly destroying your potential. The average person waits for perfect conditions that never come. They wait for the perfect moment to start their business, the perfect relationship to commit, the perfect plan before taking action. Meanwhile, life is happening right now and you're sitting on the sidelines polishing a game plan that will never be ready. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to discover why perfectionism is your enemy and what successful people do instead. This isn't about lowering your standards or accepting mediocrity. This is about understanding a fundamental truth that will revolutionize how you approach everything in your life. Chapter 1: The Perfectionism Trap. Perfectionism tricks your brain into thinking it's helping you succeed when it's actually sabotaging your progress. Here's what really happens when you chase perfection. You create impossible standards that guarantee failure. Your brain treats perfectionism like a safety mechanism. It keeps you from taking risks because if you never try, you can never fail. But here's the problem. Perfectionism isn't about excellence. It's about fear disguised as high standards. You tell yourself you're being thorough, but you're really just avoiding the discomfort of imperfection. The perfectionist mindset creates a dangerous cycle. You set unrealistic expectations, inevitably fall short, then use that failure as evidence that you need to be even more perfect next time. It's like trying to jump over a bar that keeps getting higher every time you approach it. Most people think perfectionism makes them better, but research shows the opposite. Perfectionists are more likely to procrastinate, experience anxiety, and ultimately produce lower quality work than those who embrace good enough. They spend so much energy trying to eliminate all flaws that they never actually finish anything meaningful. Here's the brutal reality. While you're perfecting your plan, someone else is already implementing theirs and learning from real-world feedback. They're not smarter than you, they're just willing to be imperfect in public. Chapter 2: The Power of Good Enough. The most successful people in history weren't perfectionists, they were iterators. They understood that good enough now beats perfect later every single time. Think about every successful product you use daily, your smartphone, your favorite apps, even the car you drive. None of them were perfect when they first launched. They were good enough to solve a problem, then they improved through real-world use and feedback. This is called the minimum viable product principle, and it applies to everything, not just business. Whether you're writing a book, starting a fitness routine, or learning a new skill, your first version should be the minimum viable version that gets you started. Here's what changes when you embrace good enough. You start shipping instead of perfecting. You gather real feedback instead of imaginary criticism. You build momentum instead of building excuses. Most importantly, you start learning from actual experience instead of theoretical planning. The good enough mindset doesn't mean you don't care about quality. It means you understand that quality comes from iteration, not from trying to get everything right the first time. You're not lowering your standards, you're being strategic about how you reach them. Chapter 3: The 80-20 Rule of Progress. Here's a secret that perfectionists never learn. 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. This means that most of what you're obsessing over doesn't actually matter. In any project, there are a few critical elements that drive the majority of the outcome. And then there are countless small details that make minimal difference. Perfectionists spend most of their time on the 80% that barely matters while neglecting the 20% that creates real impact. Smart people identify the vital few actions that create disproportionate results. Then they focus obsessively on those while accepting good enough for everything else. They understand that perfectionism is actually a form of procrastination disguised as productivity. Here's how to apply this. For any goal you're pursuing, identify the 3 most important actions that will drive 80% of your results. Focus on getting those 3 things right and accept good enough for everything else. This isn't about being lazy, it's about being strategic. The 80-20 rule reveals why perfectionism is so dangerous. When you try to perfect everything, you're essentially treating the vital few and the trivial many as equally important. This guarantees you'll waste enormous amounts of time on things that don't move the needle. Chapter 4. Embracing imperfect action. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't crossed by perfect planning, it's crossed by imperfect action. Every expert was once a beginner who was willing to be bad at something. Your first attempt at anything will be terrible, and that's exactly how it should be. The goal isn't to avoid being bad, it's to be bad quickly so you can start getting better. Every iteration teaches you something that no amount of planning could reveal. Here's what most people miss. The learning happens in the doing, not in the preparing. You can research and plan for months, but 5 minutes of actual practice will teach you more than hours of theoretical study. The feedback loop from real-world action is irreplaceable. Imperfect action creates momentum, and momentum is the enemy of perfectionism. When you're moving forward, even imperfectly, you build confidence and clarity. When you're stuck in planning mode, you build anxiety and confusion. The most successful people aren't those who never make mistakes. They're those who make mistakes faster than everyone else. They understand that every mistake is data, every failure is feedback, and every imperfect action is progress. Chapter 5. The iteration mindset. Instead of trying to create something perfect, focus on creating something improvable. This shift in thinking changes everything about how you approach challenges. The iteration mindset treats every attempt as a prototype, not a final product. You're not trying to get it right, you're trying to get it started. Then you improve it based on real-world feedback, not imaginary perfection. Here's how iteration works. You create the simplest version that could possibly work. Test it in the real world, learn from the feedback, then improve it. You repeat this cycle continuously, getting better with each iteration. This approach is infinitely more effective than trying to perfect something in isolation. Real-world feedback is always more valuable than theoretical planning because it's based on actual results, not assumptions. The iteration mindset also removes the pressure of having to get everything right immediately. You're not committing to a perfect solution, you're committing to a process of continuous improvement. This makes starting much easier and failing much less scary. Chapter 6. The feedback loop advantage. Perfectionists avoid feedback because they're afraid it will reveal flaws. But feedback is the fastest path to improvement, and those who embrace it have an enormous advantage. When you put imperfect work into the world, you get real feedback from real people with real problems. This feedback is infinitely more valuable than your own internal criticism because it's based on actual use, not imaginary scenarios. Here's the paradox. The sooner you expose your imperfect work to feedback, the faster it becomes better than anything you could have created in isolation. The work you're embarrassed to show today will be better than the work you're still perfecting tomorrow. Feedback creates a learning loop that perfectionism destroys. When you're constantly improving based on real-world input, you're always getting better. When you're stuck in perfectionist mode, you're not learning anything new. The best creators, entrepreneurs, and innovators all have one thing in common. They seek feedback early and often. They understand that criticism is not a judgment of their worth. It's information that helps them improve. Chapter 7. Progress over perfection. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be better than you were yesterday. This simple shift in focus changes everything about how you approach challenges and setbacks. Progress is measurable, perfectionism is not. You can track whether you're improving, but you can never measure whether something is perfect because perfection is subjective and impossible to define. When you focus on progress, every small improvement becomes a victory. When you focus on perfection, every flaw becomes a failure. This difference in perspective determines whether you build momentum or get stuck in paralysis. Progress compounds over time, small improvements accumulate into significant changes, but only if you're actually making progress instead of waiting for perfect conditions. The compound effect of consistent progress is more powerful than any single perfect action. Here's how to shift your mindset. Instead of asking, "Is this perfect?" ask, "Is this better than last time?" Instead of trying to eliminate all flaws, focus on reducing the biggest flaw. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, create progress in imperfect conditions. Chapter 8. The courage to be imperfect. It takes courage to put imperfect work into the world. It takes courage to start before you're ready. It takes courage to be judged on your current abilities rather than your potential. But this courage is the price of entry for anyone who wants to create something meaningful. Every person you admire had to be willing to be imperfect in public before they became excellent in private. The courage to be imperfect isn't about not caring about quality. It's about caring more about progress than about judgment. It's about understanding that the path to excellence runs directly through imperfection. Most people never develop this courage because they're more afraid of being judged than they are excited about improving. They choose the safety of inaction over the risk of imperfection, and they wonder why they never make progress. The irony is that the people who are willing to be imperfect in public are the ones who eventually become excellent. They get the practice, the feedback, and the experience that perfectionists never receive. Your imperfect action today is more valuable than your perfect plan tomorrow. The world doesn't need another perfect idea. It needs more people willing to turn imperfect ideas into reality. Stop waiting for permission to be imperfect. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop waiting for perfect knowledge. Start with what you have, where you are, with what you know right now. The time you're spending trying to perfect something is time you could be spending improving something real. Choose progress over perfection, iteration over isolation, and action over analysis. Remember, done is better than perfect, and started is better than done. Your imperfect beginning is more valuable than your perfect ending that never comes. The world is waiting for your imperfect contribution, not your perfect excuse.